Hey everyone, how's it going? Thanks so much for tuning in. Today we reach a pivotal point in the 62 GMC build. If you haven't seen some of the past few episodes, I've been working on a lot of the fabricating into the build. We've got a 62 body on a 74 frame. I built an all new short bed for it. I've got the bumpers mocked up. There has been a lot of progress made, and as you can see, the truck is pretty much together. There's still a lot more work that needs to be done, a lot more fab work and customizing and whatnot, but in part of the process, you got to test fit things and make sure you had the right clearance for this and that and whatnot, and that's what we're going to do in this video. So I've got the motor that was already in the 74's chassis. It's a small block Chevy. I've already talked about that in one of the prior episodes, but we've got a 2004 Cadillac Escalade that suffered a pretty severe front-end collision. I've actually been in the midst of parting it out over the last several months to recoup the cost on buying it in the first place, so we really don't have a whole lot of money in the LS swap that's going to go in this at the end of the day, which is always a good thing. So the goal is to pull the powertrain from the 62 or the 74, depending on which way you want to look at it, and then we're going to swap in the 5.3 and the 4L60 from the Escalade and just start mocking things up. There's a whole bunch of other things that I need to do in the process, like test fitting the Hydroboost module from the Escalade, probably the pedal assemblies, and so on and so forth. A lot of work, but this is going to be a lot of fun. Before we get started, I'd like to extend a huge thanks to GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco for sponsoring this build. At the end of the day, we wanted to build this truck with as many factory parts as possible to where at the end of the day, we have a Restomod on a budget, so to speak. This thing's going to be a lot of fun to drive, but it's also going to be very easy to live with, which is not something that you can often say about a classic vehicle, especially one that's been restored to original spec. We want to be able to drive this thing and not worry about it. So when it comes to the serviceable aspects and parts in general, we'll be able to go to acdelco.com, a local GM dealer, or any GM Genuine Parts or AC Delco distributor to get what we need and get this thing taken care of. So it has been a phenomenal journey so far, and I can't wait to see this thing come to fruition. Like, I see the vision. It's so far away, but yet it's so close at the same time. So if you haven't subscribed already, be sure to, and make sure to check that notification box so you can get notified of all of the new uploads. This is going to be fantastic. Oh, and one more thing. Check down in the description box below. I've got links to various parts that I'll be using, as well as a link to the build playlist so you can catch up on past episodes. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm fortunate to have my dad joining me for this video. He's going to give me a hand with some of the heavy lifting and hang out with us. Our first task, though, is going to be pulling the front clip off of the 62 so I can get plenty of access to this powertrain. time to pull the Escalade in the shop and start disassembly. I'll tell you guys what, that bunch of stuff that I just got finished doing was not fun. I was laying underneath this thing for an hour tackling exhaust flange bolts and the wires and all that stuff that should have taken like 10 minutes took an hour, and there's no room to lay underneath there, so it was a whole lot of fun. I'm a little wore out at the moment, if you can't tell. I'm taking a little bit of a break and having a nice delicious cannoli. So I'm going to finish eating my cannoli, and then we can finally finish getting this wire harness out, pull out the power steering lines, motor mounts, and hopefully we'll be ready to yank all this stuff out of here. happy to say that the motor has been successfully installed in the truck and it fits great. We're not going to be able to use the truck exhaust manifolds because they just don't fit right, and I had to lob a corner of one off just so it would clear the frame rail, but as far as I can tell so far, everything else is perfect. No complaints so far. But it's nighttime, it's dinner time. This has taken hours longer than I thought it was going to, so I'm wore out. I'm going to pick this back up tomorrow. We're going to talk more about the engine and what my plans are for freshening things up, and then we'll continue on with the other things like fitting the Hydroboost system and whatnot. All right, everyone, I'm back for another day of work. Let's talk a bit more about the motor itself and what my plans are. So this is a 5.3 LM7. It's an LS-based truck motor. So we have an iron block and aluminum heads with an electronically controlled 4L60E 4-speed automatic transmission. So in its stock form, this motor makes like 290 horsepower, I believe, and I don't plan on doing any significant modifications or anything like that. Like I said, the truck exhaust manifolds are not going to work, but I'm going to try a set of car manifolds off of an LS3 that I pulled a while back. I'm not sure if they'll work with exhaust routing, but we're going to give it a try anyway. All in all, everything fits really, really good. There's actually excellent space behind the motor to access all the sensors, the bell housing bolts and whatnot. So I'm very, very thrilled about that. It's a lot easier to access certain parts of the motor than it would have been in the Escalade. So as far as serviceability, I think we're in really good shape so far. Now this motor did have 180-some thousand miles on it, but after a thorough inspection, I decided to just basically run it as it is. It does have some oil leaks. It is an older motor, so when I tear the truck back down and strip the frame all the way down, I'm going to pull the motor out and tear it down to a degree, replace a whole bunch of gaskets. I've ordered a ton of stuff from AC Delco already to make sure, it's all on hand when I'm ready to get into all of this, but I'm going to clean this up and freshen it up in a video to where the motor looks like new. We're going to replace some of the accessories and do some key maintenance items like replacing the timing chain, things like that, because if there's anything I can do service-wise to this motor that's going to give us years of trouble-free service down the road, and it's relatively easy to do now, but would be really hard to do later, it's worth it just to go ahead and spend the money and do it now and save yourself some headaches. So that's the plan. Basically keep it stock, freshen it up, make it pretty. It's going to be fun. Now the time has come to see if we can figure out how to mount the Escalade's Hydroboost system. So for those that don't know, Hydroboost replaces a traditional vacuum operated brake booster with one that operates off of hydraulic fluid. It basically is plumbed in with the power steering system. So it's a bit more compact. A lot of people prefer it over a vacuum operated system, and it's especially good if you're running a more aggressive cam. With more aggressive cam, you have less engine vacuum, which could affect braking performance and so on and so forth. But it's a good cost-effective solution to give us a really nice braking system, and it's already coming off of our parts truck, so I don't have to spend any extra money. I also am going to transfer the pedal assembly over from the Escalade. This 5.3 is a drive-by-wire system, which means you have a pedal inside that operates the throttle body electronically. There's no cable that runs from the inside to the outside. So definitely got some figuring and mocking up to do. I guess first thing to do is to pull it off from the Escalade. So let's get started. where things are going to start getting tricky. Like you guys saw a second ago, I pulled the entire pedal assembly out from the Escalade. So we've got the accelerator pedal, the brake pedal, and the big steel bracket that helps locate everything. Within that steel bracket, there's also a hole for the Escalade's steering column to pass through, which I'll talk about that more in just a second. But what my grand idea was that I'm hoping to be able to work out is to get this entire assembly mounted on the firewall of the 62 in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully by aligning the Escalade's steering column hole with the one that would have been for the 62. Now, the only downside here is that this whole pedal bracket assembly was bolt-in on the Escalade, but on the 62 there's a bunch of welded in gussets and double-walled sections and stuff just for extra reinforcement. Now, I knew I was going to end up filling some holes on the firewall, like welding them up and stuff, because I didn't need them anymore. So I may end up just cutting out a big section and using the firewall section that I cut out of the Escalade as a template to help locate everything, which hopefully will get me in a good position with this entire assembly here. I know full well by doing this I'll probably end up having to modify the inner fender or something like that, just depending on where the brake booster assembly is going to end up lying, but that's the whole point of a custom build. You gotta sit and stare at it for a while, and that's about 90% of the work. So I'm gonna just do a bunch of measuring and staring and see if I can figure something out. Well, everyone, the initial fabrication of the Hydroboost and pedal assemblies is all finished up. I must say this turned out better than I thought it would. There were several moments in this process where I was kind of like, I'm not sure if it's actually going to work after all, but everything is loosely in place for mock-up purposes. Now, I am going to have to get a little creative with the pedals as far as the geometry is concerned, but everything mounted up pretty nice. Let me show you. I mentioned in a prior episode that our chassis donor, the 74 C10, was equipped with the optional heavy-duty brake package. I think the RPO code was JB5, but it's basically larger front brakes, larger rear brakes, and it's a disc drum setup. So that being said, I could not use the master cylinder off of the Escalade because that was for a disc setup, and it had, you know, sensors and connectors and stuff on it that I was obviously not going to be using in this swap. So what I ended up doing is getting a brand new master cylinder that's for this truck with the heavy duty brakes, and it supports a disc drum setup. Best of all, it bolts right up to that Hydroboost unit without modification, so I'm pretty stoked about that. Originally, my hope was to have all of this sitting more in this area right here, but with using that pedal assembly bracket and trying to line it up with the steering column, it just did not work out that way. So I will absolutely have to modify the inner fender some to accommodate this whole apparatus right here, which, you know, that's just part of the process. You figure it out as you go. There's still a bunch of holes I have to finish and some other things I gotta cut out right in there. I just wanted to make sure that everything, you know, all the mounting and everything was finished up, so, you know, I can move on from there. I'm still not sure yet whether I'll be able to use the Escalade's power steering lines or not. If not, I'll have to make my own. But based on the length of the lines themselves, they line up pretty good. They might need a little bit of tweaking on some of the ends, but other than that, I would need some adapter fittings for them to work in the C10 steering gearbox. It's just more things to figure out. I hope it works out because it'll save me a lot of time to be able to just order a set from AC Delco, but we'll just add that to the list of things to figure out. If I had to pick one thing that was the trickiest thing to figure out in this whole process, it would absolutely be the pedals, because that steel bracket that I showed you guys earlier that everything locates on worked out really, really good except for the accelerator pedal. The portion of the bracket where the accelerator pedal mounts to stuck down too far. The floor pan, or I guess the firewall, is shaped where it comes basically straight down and then angles towards me. So it was actually kicking the bracket out like that, so obviously that wouldn't work. So I ended up cutting off the accelerator pedal portion and affixing the rest of the steel bracket to the Hydroboost assembly, and it mounted perfectly flat up against the firewall and worked out really, really good. So the accelerator pedal I ended up actually mounting to the right of the steel bracket. So the two assemblies are no longer together, and I'm going to build some extra bracing and reinforcements and stuff like that to make sure there isn't any flex or anything like that. I'm going to build some brackets up top as well, so it's going to be a really, really strong setup. The other thing that I'm going to have to figure out is the pedal geometry. Now, because I had to move the accelerator pedal, I'm probably going to end up reshaping the actual, bracket a little bit to bring it a little bit more to the left. As far as the brake pedal, it's got full travel, but it's really, really close to the floor. I think once the insulation and carpet is in, you'll probably hit that stuff before the pedal actually bottoms out. So I'll probably end up cutting that, shortening it, changing the angle, basically along with the accelerator pedal, just doing a little bit of repositioning to make sure they are placed in as natural of a setup as possible. But all in all, they are in. The accelerator pedal moves. I mean, it's working out fantastic. I'm so thrilled. The one other thing that I'm hoping to get to work is the power pedal adjustment, which was equipped on that Escalade. So it's got the motor and stuff like that, but I don't know if it's just a simple power and ground, or if it needed to run through the body control module, which at that point I probably won't be able to use it. But anyway, I'm excited. There's so many possibilities here. This is like playing with, big Legos and stuff. It's just like, where do you want to put this? Let's try this. And it's awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching. Alright everyone, that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. A huge thanks once again to GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco for sponsoring this series. If you haven't subscribed already, be sure to, and make sure that notification box is selected so you can get properly notified of all of the new uploads. Don't forget to leave a like down below because it really helps the videos a lot. And one more reminder to check the description box for all the links to the parts I'm using and to the build playlist so you can catch up on past episodes. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.